Global research has established without a doubt that the biggest job creators are small to medium enterprises. And yet in South Africa, saddled with one of the highest unemployment rates in the world, we continue trying to reinvent the wheel. The corollary acknowledgement that a healthy and much expanded small business community could be a keystone of a new economic deal for South Africa is also accepted. Even the National Development Plan, the government's economic blueprint for the next 20 years, makes the same point. It says, and I quote, "A large percentage of the jobs will be created in domestic-orientated activities and in the services sector. Some 90% of jobs will be created in small and expanding firms. The economy will be more enabling of business entry and expansion, with an eye to credit and market access. By 2030, the share of small and medium-sized firms in output will grow substantially. Regulatory reform and support will boost mass entrepreneurship. Export growth with appropriate linkages to the domestic economy will be critical in boosting growth and employment, with small and medium-sized firms the main employment creators." And so it is remarkable that small businesses continue operating in an environment that is becoming more hostile, and as the SBP SME Growth Index shows, most of them are now fundamentally geared towards survival rather than growth. Fortunately, where barriers have been created by policy or regulation, they are far easier to address than those that are not. The twin questions which arise are whether the will to make the changes exist and whether what comes after it is in fact an improvement.
Tourism has been identified for a number of years as really the easiest sector in which to create new jobs. As a matter of fact, the business trust that started the Tourism Enterprise Partnership 13 years ago identified it as the sector. And it has proven to be very successful because as TEP we have done 75,000 jobs since then.
Mark Mobius of Franklin Templeton Investments comments, "They've got to make South Africa a much more attractive place for investment. I'm not only talking about foreign investment, I'm talking about local investment."
So once we understand that, and the governments or the local municipalities start appreciating the fact that people that visit their towns are crucial and that they shouldn't actually rip the smaller accommodation establishments off.
The firms selected for participation in the SME Growth Index, in line with international norms in defining small and medium enterprises, employed between 10 and 49 people. In order to measure the growth trajectory, growth potential, and overall longevity, participants had to have been in operation for 2 years or more. They were drawn in broadly equal proportions from 3 sectors of the economy: manufacturing, business services, and tourism. Those in the tourist sector were further divided between those sharing the characteristics of the group as a whole and firms supported by the Tourism Enterprise Partnership. Part of the mandate of this organization is the incubation of new and very small enterprises.
When you look at the small businesses that are assisted by TEP, the research actually shows that they are not as doing or feeling as threatened as some of the unsupported businesses. And I think we can relate this back to the fact that TEP is putting programs in place to assist them, specifically market access, where we ensure that through business linkages, they are getting more and more business.
When it came to costs as a proportion of turnover, red tape constituted 4% for the average firm. Again, the tourism sector was worst off, with almost 6% of turnover spent on red tape. Equally worrying was the fact that red tape affected the smaller businesses, those employing less than 21 people, indicating an inhibitor or hurdle to start up businesses.
It's just a cost and a cost and a cost. And I say, have you got tourism grading? They go, yeah, but that costs money. So at every single turn, although they want to become so-called legal, all right, the cost implications are just far too.
When it came to employment trends, there was a noticeable shift in the manner in which people were being employed. Firms were increasingly seeking flexibility in their employment relationships, taking on new staff in non-permanent and part-time capacities as opposed to permanent ones. Aggregate permanent employment was shrinking, with an overall decline of 6%. Of the firms participating in the survey, 74% agreed that running an SME had become more difficult. In the group of tourism panelists, there were some that were more upbeat, with about 13% feeling that business had become easier, but there was still around 2/3 that agreed it had become more difficult.
The only way that we can actually understand what our market is really about, or what our smaller sector is all about, is by assisting the smaller accommodation establishments on how to do things, all right? How to understand the bylaws, where to find the bylaws, where to get registered for a business, how to get a health certificate.
A wide range of factors were cited for restricted growth: local economic conditions, followed by a lack of skilled staff, lack of finance, and burdensome regulations, to mention a few. In the tourism sector, lack of finance accounted for 19% of the responses.
So from a funding side, there's definitely a lot of work that needs to get done. The banks are often saying that they want to work with small businesses, and I'm sure that that is the truth. But when it comes to the actual sitting down to apply for a business loan, they are still the banks still use the exact same criteria that they would for a big business. So also from a government point of view, a lot of the funds that are available all start at about R1 million. That's when you start applying, and really what the small businesses need is maybe R100,000. And I think that's really the gap in the industry at the moment, or certainly the thing that would make the tourism industry work a lot better.
Municipal rates and services topped concerns with 38%, with the tourism sector being the worst affected at 47%, more than double the next concern, regulation and red tape. These two issues accounted for nearly 60% of the concerns raised by the SMEs. The ongoing difficulties in the global economy ranked as the third most commonly named concern among South African SMEs.
Now, that's a very short summary of the Growth Index as set out by SBP. Now, joining me in studio is Terrence Corrigan, a Business Environment Specialist at SBP. Terrence, welcome. Now, according to statistics from the DTI, South Africa's estimated 2.8 million SMEs contribute between 52 to 57% of GDP, and they provide 61% of employment. On the back of that, we're sitting with an unemployment rate for the first quarter of 25.2%. There's clear potential, but clear disconnect. Why the disconnect?
Well, I think first of all, one has to appreciate that those figures are in many respects quite speculative. Mm-hmm. We don't know a great deal about what makes about our SME community. We don't know a great deal about what makes it tick. But your broad point is correct. Countries like Brazil, like India, have a very vast and extensive, developed countries like Australia have a very well-developed and extensive SME community. South Africa doesn't. Now, the reason why we engaged in conducting the SME Growth Index, which is probably the biggest study of its kind, certainly in South Africa, is precisely to try and fill this information void so that as we move forward, we can try and make better informed policy and business environment decisions to actually get that SME community moving.
So without the information, we're essentially groping in the dark.
I would say so, yes.
Now, Terrence, the results of the SBP SME Growth Index, you surveyed key three sectors: manufacturing, business services and tourism. And in regards to tourism, you made a distinction between general SMEs and those supported by the Tourism Enterprise Partnership. The latter was excluded from the study. Why the distinction between the two, and why the exclusion of the one?
Well, let me just clarify. We didn't exclude it from the study. We removed the TEP-supported enterprises from a headline report. The reason why we make that distinction is because it does give us an opportunity to study the impact of state support initiatives. There's a great deal of research about this globally, with very mixed results as to what the sort of optimum mix of state support is to get businesses into a high growth stream. Now, this allows us to look at how unsupported firms are doing versus supported firms, and it's too early to tell at present. But as this goes forward, because we are conducting this every year, we are now heading into the third round of our study. With a few more rounds under our belts, we'll be able to start to make some very interesting comparisons.
Now, the survey is split between various aspects that have an impact on SMEs. The name of your study refers to the Growth Index.
Yes.
But one of the first questions you ask your SMEs is about survival.
Yes.
Is it a survivalist race rather than a growth race with SMEs at the moment?
What came out of the second round of our study is that roughly a third of SMEs have reported some sort of threat to their survival over the past year. Now, think about that. I think the exact number is 34%. That means that for many of them, yes, it is simply a battle to survive. And while they are focusing on that, clearly their focus is not going to be on how to surge forward and expand and move from being smaller or medium-sized enterprises to being larger firms.
Now, the cost of doing business and the cost of setting up a business is also an issue in the SME environment. According to the World Bank statistics, South Africa is ranked number 39, highest on the African continent, but also in comparison to another African country behind Mauritius. From the feedback you have received from the SMEs and in terms of the survey results, what is the South African business environment like? Is it conducive enough? You mentioned the difference between state-supported and non-supported entities. Is our environment conducive to SME establishment and growth?
No, our research shows that I think very clearly. I'll just give you one quick number. R1 in every 17 rand that the average tourism firm in our sample that moves through it. In other words, about 6% of its turnover goes towards funding red tape, compliance costs.
Bureaucracy.
Amongst manufacturers, it's about R1 in every 25. But that is an enormous sum of money when you start to
When your margins are so small, yes.
Exactly. Beyond that, the firms that we interviewed for the survey are established. So we didn't go into the bureaucratic obstacles that they would have encountered to become established. But we have looked into entrepreneurs who own more than one firm, and certainly what the feedback that we've seen doesn't suggest that it's a particularly easy process to get firms set up. There are difficulties with financing. There are difficulties finding skills. There are enormous difficulties dealing with government agencies. And we're also simply sitting in a very, very uncomfortable economic space. 2012 was the year that most business people would tell you they would rather forget. Put all those things together and it's, in many respects, a perfect storm.
Terrence, if there's one aspect we could change right now to make the environment more conducive for SMEs, besides dealing with red tape and the lesser bureaucracy, what would that be?
Well,
if you could choose one.
Look, I would say that there are certain things that we are not in a position to change. We can't do much about demand in China. We can't do much about
the rand.
we can't do much about the rand. But that, for example, is something that is likely to hit your tourism firms very hard. Many of these small operators generate an inordinate amount of their business from foreign tourists, foreign households. But that, I think, just stresses the need and the imperative of making sure that we are able to control the things that we can control. And I would say red tape, bureaucracy is absolutely top of the list. If you go back to 1994 to the RDP white paper, that was an explicit promise. It would be easier for small businesses to operate, and our research suggests that is not what we're seeing. If anything, if we go back to the work we did on red tape in 2004, it seems that those burdens have increased. So that is the first thing. It's not just about the quantum of bureaucracy. It's about how efficiently it's
dealt with.
It is implemented, and whether there is a mindset of punishment or facilitation on the part of those agencies, and then also beyond that, whether the red tape that we impose in our business sector is actually proportionate to any goals that you want to achieve. Sometimes that's a very messy compromise, but right now it seems to us that it's your smaller scale businesses that are picking up that bill, and it's really too expensive for them to pay.
Definitely. Thank you for dealing with that, Terrence. And from the Growth Index, we move to our tempting town. The crew takes us to Graskop and Pilgrims Rest.
Perched on the edge of the Drakensberg escarpment, Graskop is the gateway to the panorama region of Mpumalanga. Named by Voortrekker Andries Pretorius way back in 1837, when he left the women and children on a grassy peak whilst he went down the escarpment in search of a wagon route to Delagoa Bay, which is now called Maputo. However, Graskop came into being in earnest in the early 1900s as a supply point and railhead for the nearby gold mining town of Pilgrims Rest.
Graskop is a great destination. It's very popular with some of my tourists. They like it's a gateway to the Blood River Canyon, and they like stopping at Harry's for some pancakes.
Modern-day Graskop now plies its trade as a small forestry town and is a popular hub for tourists exploring the region within easy reach of the iconic Blyde River Canyon, the greater Sabie region with its myriad of spectacular waterfalls, and a stopover on the scenic route to the Lowveld and the Kruger National Park. Be sure to give yourself enough time for the plethora of options on offer. For the lazy Saturday morning, Graskop is home to the legendary Harry's Pancakes, started 18 years ago, and inspiration for the many operations all over South Africa. Graskop is also a mecca for adventurers, with hiking and biking trails that stretch into the commercial and indigenous forests and along the escarpment. And if adrenaline is your thing, then the Graskop Big Swing will give you your fix, rated as the world's highest cable gorge swing with a 68-meter freefall. Graskop is typical of the many wonderful towns and villages in this corner of Mpumalanga and well worth a weekend getaway. While in the area, we decided to take a road trip to the historic mining town of Pilgrims Rest to see if, in the wake of the recent unrest, it was business as usual for this unusual attraction. Pilgrims Rest is only 10 kilometers from Graskop, guarded by a scenic mountain pass that leads into the valley. What made mining in Pilgrims Rest unique was that it was done through horizontal tunnels dug into the surrounding mountains, as opposed to the traditional vertical shafts. On the brink of a gold mining resurgence, Pilgrims Rest is a living, working monument that was at the center of strike action as mining rights are finalized, as well as unrest over business rights in this tourism-dependent town. The sleepy atmosphere of Pilgrims Rest belies the tumultuous frontier beginnings in the heady gold rush days in the 1870s, when 1,500 diggers worked 4,000 claims in and around the town. The inhabitants lived hard and died young, with the graveyard offering up a hint of the harsh conditions these prospectors faced in aptly named places like Starvation Gully, Poverty Creek, and Breakneck Gully.
But we have also started with our tours again to Pilgrims Rest in Mpumalanga, and our tours are back to normal again.
We will return to Pilgrims Rest again in the near future, but it is worthwhile knowing that life is back to normal in this peaceful valley.